Welcome to I Love This Thing So Fricking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I am joined by Alex, a word wizard. Welcome back to the show, Alex.
It's wonderful to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here. So here's how this works. Alex will have 3 minutes to talk about something that they love. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything they want. Our only requirement is that they love it wholeheartedly and want to tell us why. Are you ready, Alex?
Ready as I'm gonna be.
Good. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so fricking much?
I love the novel I'm working on. It's a high fantasy quest story set in a Depression-era magical America where gay werewolves fight the cops and spells are cast cross-country by telegraph. It's about queer found family and the power of love and friendship and repairing the world, not to take it back to some imagined past, but to use all the old wisdom and all the new experience to make it something even better. This book has been my favorite creative project for a few years now. It's been a nice escape from the wider world of COVID and politics and things, and I enjoy solving the puzzles of developing the structure of the world, how things work, and the relationships between the characters. But the most important reason I love this book so much is the story of how I got the world and this plot in the first place. I'm adapting a D&D campaign I played in 2019 and 2020. The player characters were all brought together from different cultures and sent on this grand quest all over a continent to find and bring back some of the gods that had been missing for centuries, and in the process get support from citizens and get people started fixing the climate and the terrible government. And I became very, very good friends with the rest of the party. And I got so invested in the world and in the characters that when the DM got burned out and ended the campaign, I felt like I had to keep working on it and tell the rest of the story. So I started a story Bible. I fixed some inconsistencies in the magic system. I even worked with the DM some to make sure that everything made sense and sort of fit the tone of the world. One of the most important things I have to keep in there is the empowering feeling that I got from the campaign. We were the people who started this movement and brought the gods back and are starting repairing the world. And feeling like I can do that is really important to me. In a real world where I feel helpless very often, this novel is a world where everything can be okay because I say so. And I couldn't have created it on my own. Couldn't have created it from nothing, but I had all of these things that were already true from the campaign. There were great constraints to work with, and I had a built-in audience to bounce things off. And I could talk about this all day. It's hard to pick what to say next, but I could talk about my character from the campaign, who is still one of the major protagonists of the novel. Their name is Ariel. They're an elf. They come from a place where there was never a terrible government that suppressed the use of magic and persecuted werewolves and so on, which are all things that happened on the main continent where most of the story happens. And so they come into this with...
Go ahead and finish your thought.
All right. They come into this world with quite a bit of privilege and have to learn how to navigate that, how to help people without imposing their culture on them, and realizing when and how people actually want their advice. This is a world that I can be helpful in, and that's why I love it.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you for telling us about the novel you're working on today.
Yeah, happy to.
I'm really fascinated by the fact that this is a story that began in a role-playing game format that now you're in the process of transforming it into prose. Could you talk a little bit more about what that process has entailed? Have there been any particular challenges or cool discoveries along the way?
I think a lot of it has been filling in gaps. There are things that players would decide about the characters in between sessions that I might not see the process of that for some of them, like a couple of the relationships that developed between PCs and NPCs. My character had one that I was trying to make develop reasonably within the campaign, and then another player towards the end, I hadn't even realized that her character had a crush on one of the helpful NPCs. And now that I know both of those things, I can go back to the beginning of the story and let those relationships develop in a way that they might naturally develop.
It's certainly different when you're telling a story that there's multiple writers working at once, improvising in the moment, and now you can take a step back and have that control and have that planning ahead to make it all make sense.
Yeah, but sometimes it feels like a lot of responsibility. Like sometimes I don't feel comfortable writing other people's characters. I don't want to speak for them. And so keeping in touch with the rest of the party and talking about how I'm developing the characters has been very important for me. I finally felt like I knew what I was doing when I wrote a scene with the DM's self-insert, and he said, yes, that's the way he would have acted.
That definitely sounds really satisfying. You mentioned that this story is really based in a theme of repairing the world, and also that this is a kind of escapism from a real world which has so many problems in need of repair. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I'll try. This is part of, sort of a cozy movement in fiction. I've been reading a lot of work by Shira Glassman and Becky Chambers that imagine worlds that suck less, places I would want to live more. They still have their own problems, but the things that I feel like our world is struggling with have mostly been solved. And that's been really inspiring to me. And I would like to get to some of those places.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping I can inspire people with my work as well.
Talk a little more about that, because you talked about what you are getting out of this experience of working with the story. What do you hope that your eventual readers will get out of reading this book?
I want my readers to feel like they can make a difference in not even in grand ways like going to protests or summoning long lost gods, but like even just by showing other people that they care.
Mm-hmm.
The NPC that my character fell in love with, he's a traveling preacher, used to be a traveling con man, but then his mentor got caught and he found a pamphlet of a sermon by this guy who's leading the revival movement to bring back the gods. And it inspired him to walk out of the police station when nobody was watching and become a preacher himself. And when we meet him, he's still getting used to that role and isn't really sure how standing on a soapbox on a street corner and talking to people is going to make anything happen. And then my character, the rest of the party show up and go, we want to help with this. We might have some ideas about how it might work. And you are going to be important to us because you can help us navigate the world as it is. And like my character, especially coming from such a different culture, needed a whole lot of context, but was just relentlessly optimistic about how this could work and this has to work. And holding on to that kind of optimism in the real world has been difficult for me. I would like to, through my work, reach out to other people that it's been difficult for and help them feel some of that.
In a way, it seems to me that you writing this book is a lot like being that character standing on the street corner, sending his words out into the world and not knowing what impact it's going to have, but being hopeful anyway.
Yeah, it really is. And there's a couple characters like that. The guy that started the revival movement didn't really get a whole lot of traction for the first decade or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then the telegraph wires were built for sending magic through them. And the goddess of wisdom was able to pull herself out of the ether and into the wires and started helping him spread the good word. I can't say I've got divine inspiration, but sometimes I can feel these characters at the back of my head giving me a little bit of a push.
Is there anything that you don't like about the novel you're working on? And if so, how do you handle that?
I'm frustrated by how slowly it's coming together.
Mm.
I've got the whole outline. I know where I want the story to go, and I kind of know how I'm getting there, but I have so little brain energy to write for myself these days. I also write for my day job, and that takes up most of my spoons. I have the best ideas for my novel right as I'm trying to fall asleep.
I relate to that quite a bit.
Yeah, so I have to jot things down very quickly on my phone before I forget them and then make sense of them in the morning. Like sometimes I feel like this book is never going to be done. And sometimes I'm more okay with that than others. Sometimes I feel okay showing people fragments of it. I'm writing it out of order in Google Drive. So I've got little documents that are scenes or chapters that I can show people, like self-contained bits of it. I've also been kind of writing side stories. Some of those are on my world building blog. I think the most important part of how I'm dealing with this is accepting that any time I spend thinking about this book is helpful in writing it, even if I'm not actually putting words on a page.
Absolutely. And I heard someone say once that a novel is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Yeah. Even the little side rambles off into the ditch to pick flowers are helpful. Like I spent a couple of days going back and forth with the DM to develop the currency. Like, what does the money look like? Who is on it? What kind of coin do you use to flip a coin? Little things that my protagonists may never notice enough to remark about. but that make the world fuller and more real.
Absolutely. And you are getting something wonderful out of this process of writing, that the fact that someday there will be a book for other people is one part of this experience. The rest is what you're going through right now.
Yeah. And sometimes I think about this book aspirationally. Sometimes I do my world building by imagining myself giving book talks. I never thought I'd be able to give a book talk before the book was finished.
Well, that's basically what this podcast is right now.
Yes, and thank you for giving me a platform.
Oh my goodness. Alex, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
You're very welcome.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you would like to learn more about our guest Alex or their novel, you can find their social media information in the episode description. And if you have something you love so freaking much you want to tell me all about it, consider this your invitation to join the show. I Love This Thing So Freaking Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed and edited by Sophie A. Katz. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU the Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.